You're listening to the Bulldog Insider Podcast, brought to you by Essentia Health.
It only takes one step, twist, or crunch to know something doesn't feel right. Essentia Health's orthopedic and sports medicine team gets you back to doing what you love with commitment, resilience, intention. We're here to keep you moving forward. Visit essentiahealth.org to learn more about orthopedics and sports medicine, like nowhere else.
Hello and welcome to Season 6 of the Duluth News Tribune's Bulldog Insider Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Wellens, the Bulldogs hockey beat reporter at the News Tribune. I'm entering my 10th season of covering Bulldogs hockey, which matches the number of seasons I covered another team from the UP for the few of those who still like to keep score on that. Also back with us for Season 6 is our sponsor, Essentia Health Orthopedics and Sports Medicine. They've been with us from Season 1, and we appreciate their support of the News Tribune's UMD hockey coverage every season. Last, but by far not least, Bruce, don't make a joke right now. Back again for Season 6 of the podcast. It's the voice of UMD hockey on My9 Sports. Welcome back, Zach Schneider.
Yeah, thanks for having me back for Season 6.
Glad you've stuck with us through the start of this crazy little endeavor we started way back when.
Yeah, this has been a fun project. This will be year 14 for me, covering the team, year 8 in the play-by-play booth. So this has been fun.
And we are going to begin this Season 6 podcast, Season 6 of the podcast. We're going to start it the way we ended Season 5. I don't know why we're doing it like this. This is Wyatt's idea, just in case everyone thinks I was nice enough to invite him back on here. It's the voice of Bulldogs hockey on KDAL. Bruce Ciskie is here to help us preview the upcoming men's and women's hockey seasons. Parentheses, Bruce now gets to say how much longer he's been doing this than Matt and Zach.
Let's see, that'd be year 19 for me.
So
year 21-ish probably covering the team, but 19 calling games.
So
I'm old.
Sort of.
We know.
I mean, it's like the beard gets grayer every year is what it is.
Only getting older.
Yep.
The men's and women's hockey seasons, they're both going to get underway the same weekend this year. I don't know if I like that or not. I haven't quite decided yet. I guess I kind of like the little later start of the women here. October 6th and 7th, the women host Long Island University, the Long Island Sharks, one of the more fun names and uniforms in college hockey right now. That's a Friday-Saturday series on the 6th and 7th. The men host Michigan Tech, the Huskies, on Saturday in the U.S. Hockey Hall of Fame game at Amsoil Arena. So both those series coming up. Nice to have an early doubleheader at Amsoil Arena. We're recording this a few weeks before that now. It's actually still September. We're kind of fresh off of NCHC and WCHA media days. WCHA does theirs over Zoom. NCHC was back at XL Energy Center in St. Paul. Huge shout out to them for hosting that in person and getting everyone together. All three of us voted in the NCHC preseason poll. The WCHA one is done by the coaches. They want nothing to do with the media's opinion. I'm cool with that.
It's less work.
The NCHC coaches are like, we don't want to do these predictions. Media do it. All three of us voted, right? Turned in our ballots and everything like that.
Yeah.
Okay, just making
I
sure.
published my votes. How about you guys?
I put mine on the new Bulldog Bites blog that was redesigned this offseason.
All
Go find that at DuluthNewsTribune.com.
Zach?
Nice setup for
They will be on Twitter. I don't have anywhere to publish them like you two do, but they will be on Twitter before the season starts.
Fair enough.
We're going to start off as we preview the season. Let's kind of run through some of these polls. Let's see where, if you haven't gone to Bruce's blog on KDAL.com or my blog on the DuluthNewsTribune.com, let's start. Where did you slot the Bulldogs on your ballot and why? Bruce, you're the guest. Go first.
I picked them third, and I admit that might be a little high. It's just I was down with the sickness at the end of August into September, so I was laying in bed, and I went through this thing probably 8-9 times. I'm not kidding. I changed it a bunch. I had the Bulldogs 6th. I had them 5th. I had them 4th. I had them at one point. I was determined I was going to have them play St. Cloud State in the first round just as a bit because they've done it the last 2 years. And I landed them 3rd. Why? Because I'm convinced that there's some things that happened last year that aren't going to happen again. I don't think the defense is going to be as leaky. I don't think the puck possession game is going to be absent as much as it was. I think this group gets back to playing Bulldog hockey, and just by doing that, they, instead of losing 20 games, they win 20, 22 games, and I think they're at least a fringe candidate to get back to the tournament.
Zach, you like how Bruce has already built in an excuse for when his poll is completely off? Oh, I was sick that weekend, guys. I didn't know what I was doing.
It was delirious, yeah.
Smart, Bruce.
Thank you.
Zach, where did you have the Bulldogs in your poll?
I went the other direction, and I hope that I put them too low. I voted them 6th. I think that I thought of a lot of the same things as Bruce, is that a lot of things that happened last year can't happen again, namely Ben Steeves scoring more than 20 goals. If that happens again, I really like their chances to make me look silly because Blake Biondi will be back and hopefully scoring again for this team. Hopefully some of the transfers are impact players, and hopefully they get better goaltending. But, when you look at the teams that they have to play at the top half of the NCHC, who are going to be strong again, the numbers are pretty overwhelming for UMD. When you break down the 16 NCAA tournament teams from a year ago, the average goals per game was about 3.5. The Dogs scored 2.5 goals per game. So where do you find 35 to 40 more goals on this team? I don't know, especially if Ben Steeves regresses to the mean a little bit as a sophomore. And then defensively, those 16 NCAA tournament teams averaged 2.4 goals against. UMD averaged 3.1 goals against. So again, can you concede 15 to 25 fewer goals this year with the same goaltenders and a defensive core that at least is more inexperienced? I'm not going to say worse than last year, but certainly losing Wyatt Kaiser, Derek Dashke is going to have an effect. So I hope I'm wrong, but I picked them 6th.
I had the Bulldogs number 5 behind St. Cloud State. So, Bruce, I do have UMD St. Cloud State.
Sickos. We're just a bunch of sickos.
Right back to St. Cloud, going right back to it for a 3rd consecutive year. I had them behind St. Cloud, Omaha, North Dakota, and Denver. So I'm right kind of between you guys. My logic behind that, and I did this in August. I was trying to get ahead of schedule here because I had a vacation coming up basically when this was due, and didn't want to be that guy who turned in his ballot to Michael Wiseman last. But I think the goaltending is going to be better. I do think that's going to take a step. How far of a step, I don't exactly know. But like Zach, I worry about the scoring. I just don't know yet exactly where the goals are going to come from. I think Ben Steeves is going to have to match or exceed what he did last year, which is asking a lot. Blake Biondi needs to go back to the sophomore Blake Biondi where he put up 17 goals. And then they still need other guys to step up and put up some goals. And we're not looking for 30 goal scorers here. Maybe one guy hits the 20 mark. Not asking for that. Just need some guys to hit double digits. I hope the team defense is improved. I think that's another thing that wasn't always great last year, and I just don't know about that yet. Did everyone have Denver atop the NCHC?
Yes.
Is that everyone was there?
So none of us are the weirdos that voted North Dakota number 1 with 8 new defensemen and a new goaltender.
No, I put North Dakota in the top half.
I didn't.
But I think winning the NCHC would be a very good season for the people in Grand Forks.
So for the nice people listening out there that are on the X or the Twitter or whatever we're calling it now and have been wondering who these 12 people are in the NCHC preseason media poll that picked North Dakota number 1, you've now been made clear it's none of us. And none of us picked UMD number 1 either.
Yeah, there's
Somebody
one person out there
voted UMD number 1 in the league. We don't know who that person is. It wasn't us.
Yeah. What do you think the Bulldogs' ceiling is in the NCHC, and what do you think their basement is? Zach, you had the Bulldogs at 6. Is that the basement for you? Or
yeah, probably. I think that's where maybe I expect them because that's where I voted them to finish. But to say they're going to finish 7th or 8th, I think is, even more pessimistic than maybe the view that I'm putting on it currently. But 3rd is probably their ceiling. If they have a really good year, I could see them finishing 2nd. But winning the NCHC regular season is such a tough thing to do. It's such a grind, and I don't know if this team is built for that kind of sustained success. Could I see them getting into the tournament and winning a few games, whether it be in the NCHC playoffs or the NCAA playoffs? Sure, this team could win a game or two at that level. Can they do it for a full season? I don't think so. I'll say 3rd is their ceiling.
Bruce, did you have them? Is 3rd the ceiling, or how high do you think they can go?
So I did the ceiling basement thing in my blog at KDAL610.com when I did the whole ballots, and I decided I'll do a ceiling and a basement for every team. I don't think Denver's the shoo-in that people think they are, which is maybe why North Dakota got 12 first-place votes, right? Somebody else has a chance to win this league. Denver lost a lot in all facets of their game. Bell cow goaltender, top goal scorer, top defenseman, top power play defenseman, they're all gone. So it's not beyond the realm of possibility somebody else wins this league. I think UMD's ceiling is 2nd/3rd, somewhere in there. I think they can finish 2nd, and it will go into some of my reasoning for that later on, because there's things that I've got cooked up here. Don't worry. We'll get to it. There's a couple different things that I'm focused on with this Bulldog team. Basement, I think they could finish 7th. People are sleeping on Colorado College. And I do wonder where the goals are going to come from with that team. But I know this. They've got a goaltender. Caden Americo had a .925 save percentage last year. Oftentimes, he had some pretty garish defensive play. That's going to be better. He might not put up a .930. He might only be a .915 or a .920, but he might not face the kind of pressure he faced last year with a .925. They're going to be better as well. The basement continues to come up. Miami's going to be better, but I don't think they're going to be better enough to get out of 8th. But the basement's coming up. This league's getting harder and harder and more balanced, I think, every year.
Yeah, for me, I think, they got Mberko. Caden's great. Phenomenal goaltender, best in the league, but CC lost a ton.
They did.
There's not much in front of him right now.
Well, they scored 50-some goals last year, and Hunter McCown scored 22 of them, and he's in Columbus now. So.
Yeah, that's the problem with CC. So for me, the basement for UMD is 6th. I think they could finish as high as 2nd, and that's because teams 2 through 6 in the NCHC, and that's North Dakota, Omaha, St. Cloud State, UMD, and Western Michigan. Just throw them into a blender, and all those teams have a strength and a lot of question marks and weaknesses. Western, I have 6th because I don't know about their goaltending right now. I get why a few people, I'm surprised 12 people did it. I can see why. I think the North Dakota got as many first place votes as they did. It's because Denver does have holes. I still think they have just so much coming back that they're going to be solid from start to finish. North Dakota, the question is, if Ludwig Persson is the guy we all saw those first few years at Miami instead of last year, they have a shot. They definitely have a shot. And Bruce makes it like a negative that North Dakota turned over their entire defensive group. I actually think that's a positive of why they could be better this year, because that group really struggled last year with injuries and such. And, those struggles are why UMD kind of probably benefited and got Luke Bast. But yeah, I think 2 through 6, you can throw them into a blender and go from there. The WCHA preseason poll, Bulldogs were slotted 4th in that one. By the way, NCHC poll, the Bulldogs were 5th, so I had them where about everyone else had them. WCHA poll, we don't have a vote, but if you did, where would you put the Bulldogs? And what do you kind of see as their basement and ceiling in the WCHA? Zach, we'll start with you on this one.
This just feels like a team that's destined to finish 4th again in the WCHA. I mean, they're with what they lost last year. We talked about it all throughout last season. This was kind of their chance, at least, their window of the next couple years, because now they get a lot younger, they get a lot more inexperienced, which is not necessarily a bad thing. They've got good players coming in, but it's going to take a while to get used to the WCHA. And Ohio State, Wisconsin, and Minnesota are just so dang good that I would pick them 4th, but I wouldn't be surprised if they finish 5th. St. Cloud State, I think, is going to be really, really tough for UMD this season and others. But the margin for error is always so thin in the WCHA that it just feels like a team that's destined to finish in fourth place again.
Bruce?
I don't disagree. I would have picked them fourth. I think their ceiling is probably third-ish. Minnesota lost a lot too, right? They're not the veteran team that they were last year. So I think they could finish third if things break their way, but I think fourth is probably about right, and hopefully they're not tussling too hard with St. Cloud State for that last home ice spot.
Yeah, I could see if things really go south for Minnesota, they're in a complete turnover, almost an entirely new coaching staff besides Brad Frost. He promoted his director of hockey ops. So there's a lot of change going on with the Gophers right now, which is why Wisconsin, who I think most people think won a national championship probably a year ahead of time last year. Wisconsin and then Ohio State went on a free agent spending spree and loaded up there. There are some hey, maybe all those transfers don't gel at Ohio State and everything goes south for them and it doesn't work. You don't know how that's going to. So there's a chance. And then I think, the big X factor for the Bulldogs is how good, and I'm going to totally botch her name all season long because anyone who's a veteran of this podcast knows I can't speak any French or pronounce any French words. Go back and listen to an episode with Tanner Lattereau from, I think, season 1 or 2 or something like that. Eve Gascon, if she's as good, and we'll get into more her in a little bit here, if she's, as good as a lot of people think she is, and what people have told me and from the bits and pieces I saw in practice, they could make a run. There may not be a lot of goals scored on them, but St. Cloud State also has really good goaltending as well in Sani Ahola and JoJo Chobak. So that's where, I'm with you guys. I would have put the Bulldogs fourth, but I could see St. Cloud jumping them in the standings. Though I'm not sure where the Huskies are going to get much, offense and such coming. They have some transfers, but it's not, loaded. They're probably still maybe a year away as well. Brian Adolski from fully getting that team going. And by then, Maura Kroll's probably matching him, if not exceeding and such. So that'll be an interesting tussle, the Huskies and the Bulldogs, I think, coming up here. What needs to happen for the UMD women to make a fourth consecutive NCAA tournament appearance? Bruce, what do you think?
Well, the easy answer is Eve Gascon's got to come in here and be really, really good. And she still does. Don't get me wrong. Haley McLeod is not incapable, by the way.
I was impressed with her last year. She looked pretty solid.
She was good. And
she was good.
So that, I think, maybe takes some pressure off of Eve coming in here. She doesn't have to be the savior of the program. She
doesn't have to come in and post shutouts in their first 10 contests.
That's not a bad thing. Because she's a freshman that's learning a second language and she's never played competitively at this level before. These are all things she has to adjust to. We've seen this before with these athletes. It sometimes takes some time. The more time you can give her when you're not putting the weight of the world on her shoulders, it's not a bad thing. But they've got to find some scoring then. And I don't know where it's going to come from. Olivia Wallin comes in here. She's proven she can score at the Division I level. I'm intrigued by Peyton Holloway, the background she has. Again, she's been a goal scorer. They've got to find some goals. They've got to be able to, they've got to be as deadly on the power play as anybody, because it's hard to score 5-on-5. If you can take advantage of your power play chances, you're in really good shape.
I tell you what, if they're going to make the NCAA tournament, Eve Gascon better be the savior. Because scoring goals is going to be really, really difficult. Yeah. This team lost 65% of its goals, 60% of its total points, 4 of its top 5 scorers. I don't mean to be the doomsday guy here, but the women's program is not in a total rebuild by any means, but this is going to be a process again to develop, veteran players who were like the Ashton Bells and the Gabby Hughes, and some of these freshmen might turn into players like that. But UMD has had really good goaltending before on the women's side and not been either in the NCAA tournament or been probably a serious contender once they got to the NCAA tournament because they couldn't score goals. The years that they've been, you felt like they could win a national title. They had goal scorers because that's what the women's game is built on. We talked about this last year. 3 of the 4 Frozen Four teams that played in Duluth had 20 goal scorers. Some of them had multiple 20 goal scorers, and Wisconsin was the only team without it. They won a national title. They had 3 players, maybe 4, with 15 or more goals on the year. UMD just doesn't have that kind of depth. Manny McMahon could get to 15 plus. Clara Van Wieren could get to 15 plus. Unless they both do it and put it all together this year, I think it's probably unlikely that UMD sees the NCAA tournament. But unless Ev Gascon comes in and pitches 15 shutouts on the year, then they might have a shot.
Yeah, and I think, looking back at past years, I think it helps that the NCAA tournament field is now an 11-team field, though Newhoff steals a bid, so that cutoff comes down and such. I think it's going to be the big question is, who's going to score goals? Are there some players that can come out of the shadows who honestly probably haven't had much of a chance to shine because of the talent ahead of them? Are they going to come out of the shadows and put up some points? What needs to happen for the UMD men to get back to the NCAA tournament after missing last year? Bruce?
Well, I've got two stats, one of which, if you read the blog, you've already seen it. Last year, this team allowed about 29.5 shots on goal per game. That is the most a UMD team has allowed per game in almost 20 years. 2004, 2005 was the last time that a team allowed more than 29.5 shots on goal a game. That number's coming down. And I can promise you it's coming down. Come hell or high water, that number's coming down. They will be a better defensive team. And that, yes, they lose Wyatt Kaiser. Yes, they lose Derek Daschke. But defense is not just about those guys on the blue line. It's about everybody on the ice. And I think that you're going to see, I think, a better commitment. And what's the best defense, guys? Puck possession. I think you're going to see a better commitment to that puck possession game. As Scott Sandelin always says, there's no shot clock. You can hold it as long as you can have it and wait for the right opportunity, wear guys down, get an opening, and take advantage of it. And I think you're going to see a more concerted effort to do that. If you look back at the last 3 or 4 tournament teams from UMD, they have been plus 10, even more than that per game in even strength shots on goal. Last year, they were basically even. They get back to playing their game. That's how they get back to the NCAA tournament.
Zach?
Yeah, I mean, I can't add much more to it. They need to refine their identity, the thing that's made them successful for the last 12 to 15 years. Last year and even over the last 2 to 3 years, they kind of got away from it a little bit, and some of that is just the personnel that they had, but some of it is, the guys on the ice need to embrace, who they are and what they are to this team. You look at a couple of the title teams, and they had players on those teams that weren't necessarily the best players on the ice, but they embraced their role, whether it was a third line role, fourth line role, sixth D man. We talk about Ben Pat all the time on this podcast as one of our favorite players as media members, because the guy just embraced who he was within the UMD hockey program. And so we're looking at guys like Luke Lohheit and Quinn Olson to just embrace who you are. Dominic James, another one. Embrace who you are and go to it. So often last season we saw those guys try to be some things that they weren't, and that's when UMD really got into trouble, I thought, in games and series. But if this can be a really boring puck possession, we're going to beat you 2-1 type of team again, then they're going to find success. If they're going to try and beat teams 6-5, like Western Michigan tries to do, then they're not going to be successful.
Yeah, I think Zach's right. The magic word 2-1, that was the running joke, right, through the 17-18 national championship and then again in 18-19. Bulldogs got to get boring again. Like, just make it that game that the rest of college hockey complains about on Twitter of, man, why do we got UMD gets up 2-0 and the game's over? Like, I still remember. I'll always say one of the most impressive games I saw was the 19 national championship in Buffalo. You remember that game in your head as that game wasn't even close. It was, a pretty one-sided game, but that was a 1-0 game through so much. But the Bulldogs were such a good team in goal, defensively, puck possession, that a 1-0 game felt like 5-0. And when they went up 2-0 in the third, it was late in the third period, they finally went up 2-0. They got the third goal, an empty netter, I believe, if I remember right. Like, by the time they went up 2-0, it was like, well, just call the game, mercy rule it at this point. Like, stop the madness. It felt like they were beating UMass, like they were beating a dead horse at that point, going up 2-0. Like, that's the team, right, that they they need to be. So to get back to the NCAA tournament, they're going to need good goaltending. The goaltending, again, and I think Scott's going to, has mentioned it too. The goaltending's got to be better. The team defense in front of them's got to be better. If they're able to do that, I think the goals will actually come. They'll be able to get them.
Scott Sandlin so often tells us he wants his players to make it hard on the other team, right? Make their life hard, especially when they're at home. But those teams did it differently than a lot of what we think of. When we hear a head coach say make it hard on them, we think, finish your checks, get into the corners.
Put them to the boards, basically.
Right.
Skating refrigerators.
Be super physical. Yeah.
To steal the Jason Herter line.
Yeah.
The Western Michigan teams of Andy Murray that were the skating refrigerators.
Be in their ear. Get into some after the whistle stuff, but not too much. That's not necessarily what he means.
No.
UMD, that 18-19 team, when they got up 1-0, not just in that national championship game, but on any team, make it hard because we're going to have the puck for the next 58 minutes, and you can try to get it from us, but when you do, then we're going to hit you and take it back. That's how they made it hard on teams. And teams, by the end of the game, I think, wanted nothing to do with UMD. And then they had a physical side, obviously, with the Nick Wolfs of the world. But that wasn't their primary way of making teams miserable.
No, and it was defending the neutral zone first. Defending the breakout first, but the neutral zone, you weren't getting through clean. And that's going back, that's what I think this team has to do. You're not going to get through the neutral zone clean. You're not going to get odd man opportunities. If you get the puck into the offensive zone, you're probably dumping and chasing, which means our guys are going to beat you to it, and we're going to get it out. Clean exits for your team and not so clean for the other team. And again, that was the identity. I think they've got the pieces in place that are capable of doing those things. It's a matter of putting them in position to do them.
All right, guys, who's the returning player that needs to make a jump this season for their team to achieve their goal? Let's start with the women. Zach, who do you got?
Nina Job-Smith is who I landed on. There's a couple that you could pick here for the women's team, I think. Same with the men. But if Job-Smith is able to fill in a role that's left vacant by Ashton Bell and Maggie Flaherty, I think this team has a good chance to be at least somewhat successful. Obviously, we talked about this all last year, too. The standards of what they expect, might have to be somewhat lowered from the outside looking in. I know inside that locker room, they're not going to be lowered at all. But if Nina can be a true number one defenseman for the team, then I think that their blue line will be easily capable of keeping up in the WCHA.
Bruce, who you got?
Well, in the idea of going with somebody different, I'm going to say Gabby Krause. I think she took a big step last year, and she's one of those that I think they could squeeze 5 or 10 more goals out of her by putting her in some different positions. We've seen her; she's good around the net, which is so important. I think she's going to get a little more power play time this year, just by nature, the fact they lost so much of that on that power play. And somebody who's good around the net on a power play, they're going to score some goals. It's bound to happen. So I think Gabby Krause is somebody who can help fill some. No one's going to fill the offensive void by themselves. But she is someone that I think is, as you try to replace some of this in the aggregate, she can really help you out.
Yeah, that's a good one when we talk about players that coming out of the shadows, maybe stepping into opportunities that weren't there before because of all the veteran and talent that UMD had. I got Clara Van Wieren. I think I kind of went back and forth between her and Nina Job-Smith. Again, another player that's able to step into maybe a little bigger role. I think she's always shown the potential to be a double-digit point scorer. I feel like she plays, a little similar to Gabby Hughes in that physical style. And I just think that's those are good attributes to have in the WCHA, which can be a grind.
She's got a little Hughes and a little Lindsay to her game, I think, and her strength on the boards and that type of thing it makes her. She's already a difficult player to play against, but if she can add a little more goal scoring touch, she's a big part of this team, I think.
Who do you guys got on the men? The returnee you need to see take a step, Bruce.
That's a little tougher. I'm going to the back end. I'm going to say Owen Gallatin. I think he's going to see some more minutes. He's going to see some more power play time. And again, as you're trying to find some people that can do the things that you want to do, well, what are the things you want to see these defensemen do? Stop plays and get the puck out, starting with it. He's got a good first pass. He's a good skater. He's got a good stick. And he does have that offensive ability. He can add a little bit from the blue line. That's always important. I think he's a guy that could be in for a big year.
Zach, who you got?
I went with Quinn Olson. Just a guy who is, as I talked about earlier, a guy who I thought got away from his identity a little bit. Where he's at his best is when he's a thorn in the other team's side. And Scott Sandlin has shared that, that Quinn Olson can be I won't share the exact words he uses to describe him, but he says he can be a real jerk to play against. And that's when he's at his best. And so if
Jerk is the censored word?
Jerk is the censored word.
Yeah, that's a good one to use there, Zach.
Yeah, there's a couple of them. But, I mean, that's when Quinn is at his best. And so we need to see that from the whole year. And there's a reason that he was drafted in the 3rd round and, is back for a 5th year. I think the NHL team is waiting to see that consistently out of him too. We've seen it for like stretches, right? Not quite a half a season, but we've seen it for 3 weekends in a row, and then it goes away. But those 3 weekends in a row, he's the best player on the ice. I mean, when he's going,
yep,
he can be the best player on the ice almost every weekend for this team. And it doesn't mean he's scoring a ton of goals. It just means he's out there doing his job. And if he does that, it's going to set the tone for the rest of the team.
When the James gang, as I coined them in 21-22, had their moments, I thought Quinn Olson was the driver. Dom with his skating, people look at it flashes. You notice that, right? You notice Blake because he's scoring the goals. To me, Quinn Olson was the driver of that line. He was, as you said, the best player on the ice a lot of those games in 21-22, and it wasn't necessarily showing up on the score sheet. And yeah, I agree 100%. That's a great point. Getting back to that would be huge.
All right, we are going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the transfers and the freshmen that we want to keep an eye on as well. You're listening to the Bulldog Insider Podcast, brought to you by Essentia Health.
Greetings from Northlandia, a place to bring your curiosity, because here you will find curiosities. Whether it's a look inside the Northern Rail Train Car Inn or an introduction to Duluth's musical roboticist, Robot Rickshaw, we celebrate the region's distinctive people, places, and history. Each week, I'm joined by my fellow reporters who share the unique and fascinating stories that they discover while exploring the Northland. You can find new episodes of the Northlandia podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Join us along this journey and discover the extraordinary stories that you just might miss if you're not in the right place at the right time, ready to step off the beaten path with no rush to return, here in Northlandia.
Hi, I'm Maria Lockwood, a reporter with the Superior Telegram. Explore Superior and Douglas County history with me on Archive Dive, a monthly podcast available at superiortelegram.com or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Welcome back to the Bulldog Insider Podcast, brought to you by Essentia Health, Orthopedics, and Sports Medicine. They're proud to be the team physicians for the UMD Bulldogs and provide sports medicine care to more than 25,000 student athletes in the community to ensure they can compete at the highest level while protecting their long-term health and athletic futures. Thanks to Essentia Health for their support of the Bulldog Insider Podcast. I'm Matt Wellens along with Zach Schneider and Bruce Ciskie here on the Bulldog Insider Podcast. We're previewing the upcoming 2023-24 UMD men's and women's hockey seasons. As promised, we're running down. We talked about the returnees that we think need to make a jump. Now we're going to look at some of the new players coming in for both the men and women. Which transfer do you think has the most potential? We'll start with the women. Bruce?
Olivia Wallin coming in from Penn State. As I said in the first segment, she has proven she can score goals at this level. This team needs people that can score goals. And having somebody who's proven that they can do that, I think, is massive because it. Again, we talk taking pressure off the young players. They've got a lot of promising young talent on this team that it's going to take some time. So having people like Olivia come in here that have proven they can score goals at the Division I level against top competition, that's a fantastic development. I think you'll see her in a lot of big-time roles this year for UMD.
Zach, how about you?
Yeah, other than her, Reese Hunt is probably not a threat like Wallin is to maybe lead the team in goals scored, but I think Hunt could provide some really much-needed secondary scoring for sure. She played on a Bemidji team that, the men and the women aren't much different. It's a fairly, ground and pound type style there in Bemidji. And so to open her up a little bit, I think I've liked what I've seen out of her skating, especially when the Dogs have played the Beavers in the past. So I'm curious to see what she'll do now that she's here.
Sorry, I talked to Emma Sobiek when she got the job on this coaching staff, and she was in Bemidji the last couple of years, and she speaks so highly of Reese Hunt, and she really thinks that there's a lot of upside potential there with her in this system playing a little differently than what she was doing in Bemidji.
Yeah, I think both those two are the players to watch. I think Reese Hunt is going to have an immediate impact because she knows the WCHA. She knows what she's getting into. I was talking to Maura Kroll for those of you that read the early look at the UMD women's hockey roster. Olivia Wallin played in College Hockey America. That's a very different league than the WCHA. That's a definite step down. I don't think there's any argument there. I mean, I think most leagues in women's college hockey are a step down from the WCHA, but the folks in ECAC and Hockey East will wrongly tell you otherwise. She's going to have an adjustment period, mostly to the physicality. Like the goal scoring, yeah, but the physicality of the WCHA is just different. She's going to have to get used to whistles just disappearing and stuff like that. They allow them to play in that league. How about for the men? Who's the transfer you think that can make an impact?
I'm a big fan of Connor McMenamin. I like his game. He's good on the wall. He's good in front of the net. Again, proven he can score goals at this level. Yeah, he does have a big bushel full of them coming in. He's a 24, I think, goal scorer in 4 years at Penn State, but they used him in all sorts of different situations. He kind of strikes as kind of that Swiss Army knife guy. If you need a power play guy, he can do it. You need a guy to kill penalties, he can do it. You need a guy, left wing, top line, second line, third line, doesn't matter. He can play it. So I think he's a really important addition.
Yeah, really similar to Wallin, right? He's going to have to get used to the physicality and the grind that is the NCHC compared to where he was playing in the Big Ten before, but I think he's poised to have a good impact. And then Luke Bast on the back end really steps into a great situation from the one he left in North Dakota. He's going to get to play probably in the top four to start and a chance to prove himself. He's going to get a lot of minutes, and hopefully he can regain some of the form that we saw, because I think he was a really solid player 2 years ago at North Dakota as a freshman, and then he just kind of, with that whole defensive core last year, just was somewhere else last year. And if he kind of refocuses, a new scenery will help him, then he'll be a good addition to the blue line.
Yeah, and what I like about Bast is he could be here. He's 2 years. He's a junior. So they're going to get some time out of him, some use. He's not just a one and done here. By the way, I'm a little shocked. Bruce Ciskie, closet Penn State
apparently
fan here.
I guess that's what we just learned, isn't it?
And McMenamin here.
We are Penn State. Yay. I don't know.
Sorry you didn't get to join us for that Frozen Four at Penn State. Clint Austin and I had a good time there.
Well, and they're whiteouts this weekend as we're sitting here taping, so I guess I'm wearing a white shirt. Maybe I am a Penn State guy.
You're wearing blue and white today on this podcast.
That's a good
Bruce
point.
Ciskie, secretly a Penn State fan. You heard it here first. Which freshman intrigues you the most? We'll start with the women. Zach?
Other than Ev Gascon.
Yeah, we're going to disqualify. We're going to disqualify. You got to name someone other than Ev Gascon.
We already talked about that, but I mean, obviously she's, that storyline will be continuing. Peyton Holloway is the one for me. I think she was almost a point per game player last year at Shattuck, and obviously the jump to the WCHA, no one can expect that, but if she can come in and as a freshman be impactful offensively, that would go a long, long way to maybe supporting some of those returners or an Olivia Wallin. Reese Hunt type of players. If you can have a freshman come in and get double-digit points or more, that'd be great to see from Holloway.
Bulldogs have done a good job developing defensemen. Ida Carlson comes in from Sweden. I'm intrigued. I want to see what she can do, and she's going to have some opportunity. And this is, like I said, this is a program that's shown Nina Jo Smith, Toba Henderson, Ashton Bell, Maggie Flaherty. They churn out defensemen, and this is, I think, this group is the next in that line.
Yeah, you guys both took the two players that I had if either 1A or 1B. I got a chance. I've caught as we record this, I've caught one UMD women's practice, and they were the team I really wanted to see early on in the preseason here because they just have so many new names, numbers, and faces that you have to learn. And I was focusing on a lot of the new players, and Peyton Holloway just immediately jumped out to me in practice. Like, she's got a zip to her. She was kind of fun to watch the other day. And then Ida Carlson, Maura Kroll had mentioned this to me, that she's listed as 5'9", both on UMD's website, and I went and looked on the IIHF website. Like, Team Sweden lists her as 5'9". She looks bigger than 5'9". She plays, when she's on the ice, she looks bigger than 5'9". And part of it might be, as Maura Kroll said, she's got the longest stick in all of hockey. She's got a long stick, a long reach. She's lanky. And again, she jumped out again, another player that, wow, that's a good sized defenseman out there on the blue line for the women. And again, like the WCHA, it's nice to have a big body like that can muscle and work your way around. Again, a league that's really physical, a league where it's a battle in front of the goal on both ends. So, I'm intrigued to see how those two players kind of fit into the roster this year for the women. And there's opportunity there. Because of the turnover, there's some opportunity for those freshmen, I think, to make an impact. How about the men? Who's the freshman that we're all watching? Are we all just going Aaron P? Are we all going to go Homer, Aaron Pionk of Hermantown? I specifically didn't put him on here because I was afraid you two would go Homer on Aaron Pionk.
Yeah, well, how can you not? I mean,
right?
The way that storyline and unfolded, and he ends up at UMD where Neil was successful, many years ago, and he's got the Hermantown heritage, like so many players. He gets
drafted by the Wild then this summer.
Right. I mean,
it was just like...
Yeah, it's just, I mean, hopefully he's here for a bit longer than his brother was, but other than that, I'm looking forward to seeing what he does.
I'll give you one more name. Anthony Mangini is a guy that I know this coaching staff is very high on. He might not ever be a guy that's a 25 goal scorer in college, but he does so many of the little things. He can skate. It seems like he fits what they've had before in guys that have been captains, guys that have been kind of heart and soul guys on teams that have won a lot of games here, and I'm looking forward to watching him develop.
I'll throw out another one as well. Matthew Perkins, he's coming off a USHL Clark Cup title with Youngstown. He can play wing or center. He hasn't been at that Steve's level of scoring goals, but he's shown he can score goals in the USHL, and it's not easy to score goals in the USHL. So I'm kind of curious to see, as we keep looking at the UMD men, where are the goals going to come from? A lot of us, we keep bringing up guys that so far through their careers haven't shown it at a consistent enough level that they're double-digit goal scorers. Obviously, we only have 1 year for Ben Steeves, so that's a small sample size. I think they're going to need some goals from maybe this freshman class that is not as, big name, high profile as, say, the class that's coming in next year. Those are names many of you are, especially if you followed Minnesota high school hockey, you're very, 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 very familiar with those players that are coming in. This class could be a sneaky good class as they get a jump of college year experience on those guys.
And it's also an older class.
These are all 19, 20-year-olds.
Cole Spicer and Aiden Dubinsky are both younger as sophomores than Matthew Perkins, who's the youngest freshman coming in. And that was purposeful. It was, they saw, well, first off, they saw the struggles that some of the 18-year-olds had adjusting to the NCHC. But part of the reason for that is with the fifth years, there are so many 24 and 25-year-olds in this league right now. And so now instead of having 18-year-old freshmen being thrown to the wolves, you've got 19 and 20-year-old freshmen that you're not expecting to come in and make an impact immediately. I think it's a recipe, maybe not for immediate success for those guys, but certainly long-term.
All right. I want to get to some questions that were submitted via Twitter, X, whatever you want to call that platform. Nowadays, did a shout out a couple days before we recorded this. This is a good one from our friend Biddy. What are some under-the-radar storylines you are thinking about for both squads? Bruce?
Well, I said I had two stats. Here's the second one. UMD had 27 fewer power plays than anybody in the NCHC last season. 27 fewer power plays than Miami, who was one of the worst puck possession teams in the country. 27. That's basically 3/4 of a power play a game that they're missing compared to everybody else in their conference. The power play is 24% last year, which we tend to forget about because we saw so little of it. That number might not go up, the 24%. The other number's coming up. And there's a litany of examples out there in sports of teams that, maybe they were the least penalized team in the NFL over the course of a 16, 17 game season. And the next year, they suddenly, out of nowhere, with the same personnel, were middle of the pack. 2017 Vikings come to mind. One of the least penalized defenses in football in 2017, mid-pack in 2018 with the same guys. How does that happen? They didn't play any different. For some reason, the flags just didn't fall their way. I think you're going to see a little difference in that regard this year for UMD. And again, you bring that number up, you're bringing up your goal number artificially because you're not going to miss on all 27 of those power plays. It's just not going to happen. So now you're getting more goals out of your power play. Just because you're getting more chances on your power play brings up that goal number. Again, brings up your puck possession number because if you have it, they don't. All these things I think will combine. It's not going to be one thing makes this team better. It's going to be a lot of different things.
So when Heather Weems said on NCHC Media Day that she thought the league officials were better than some other people did, she was talking to Bruce.
She was definitely talking about Bruce.
Because we're recording this 2 weeks before the puck drops on the season, and he's already complaining about
I
the
did feel
officiating.
attacked a little bit as I was standing in that room listening to that speech. That one went right. It hit me. I'm like, she's talking to me right now.
I kind of want to go back now. Was she directly glaring at Bruce when she said
she
that?
wasn't. I was trusting.
I
was paying attention to that. She was not.
Was Bruce Ciskie. Zach, you got a storyline?
Yeah, I got two.
Storyline
I got
with
two.
The men or the women?
I got one for each. Both are coaching storylines. If Scott Sandlin gets to 20 wins, which would be the 13th time in his tenure at UMD that he's had a 20-win season, he gets to 464, which would make him the 20th all-time winning coach in men's college hockey history. So he's continuing to move up the ranks. I know he doesn't care about that.
Yeah, he'd just tell you
he's
that you have
shrug
given
it
a
off.
stat. You've given a stat that makes him old.
Yeah, that's old, basically.
Right. Yeah. I'm not going to ask him about it until he gets to 464.
We're going to tell Scott that Zach came on the podcast and just said you were old.
Yeah,
flat out, Scott's old.
Yeah, it's
You're
just
assuming Scott's not listening to this.
Well, it's just an excuse to bring out the mullet picture from when he got here in 2000.
Good point.
So that's a season-long thing for Scott. It's just a longevity thing for him. Proves that he's had some really good teams and players over his time here. The one for the women, and I feel very pessimistic somewhat on this season opening podcast because what I'm curious about as the year goes on and into even next off season is the effect of Laura Bellamy not being in Duluth. I don't know that it'll have a huge effect, and I don't mean this negatively toward Laura on the play on the ice this season because they still have Maura Kroll, they still have Laura Schuler, they brought in Emma Sobiek from Bemidji, who's a very good coach in her own right. But the recruiting aspect of this, how many players are going to end up out east that could have ended up in Duluth? It's going to start. We already saw the 2 days after she was announced, somebody from Minnetonka committed out to Harvard. That's all Laura Bellamy. That player almost guaranteed wasn't going to Harvard before Laura Bellamy was named the head coach. So how many recruits is your lead recruiter? Essentially, that's who Laura Bellamy was going to steal from UMD, in the next year to 2 to 3 years. I bet she's going to get some good ones.
And it's not even directly steal. Like we're not talking about her going and poaching players.
No.
Committed.
It's just
these are players that UMD would have had a shot at
because they like Laura.
Yeah,
you see this,
but
all the
instead
time.
they're going to follow her. Yeah,
right.
It's a whole different part. of it.
Yeah, when I say steal, it's not a negative thing. It's just I like Laura Bellamy, and I'm going to go where she's at, and she's not at UMD. She's at Harvard, and that's where I want to go. And I feel like UMD is going to miss out on some players, and they're just going to have to go restock the well. And so it'll be interesting to see now who leads the recruiting efforts for the Bulldogs moving forward as well.
And really, with the women, to me, it's generic. I know, Biddy, I'm sorry, but it's who steps up. Because there are so many, and you lose 9 players, the caliber of the 9 players they lost. That's the natural question going into a season. And we can sit here and pretend that we know, this person. We don't know. At the end of the day, if this team is good enough to win 20 games and potentially get back to the NCAA tournament, it might be on the back of somebody we haven't mentioned yet. you just don't know. And that's part of what makes this fun, right? Is you go into a season with some unknowns, with not necessarily having all the answers and not knowing exactly what to expect. It does add a little bit to it.
I thought it was interesting. Zach brings up the Minnetonka recruit going to Harvard. And then like a week or two later here, Mora lands a recruit from Virginia. First ever recruit from Virginia. So I was like, oh, hey, that's how this is going now. So I think, Zach, that will be interesting, the Laura Bellamy dynamic. From a personal note, I had a stat that I wanted to get verified the other day, and I used to go to Laura Bellamy for that. and I almost texted her, but I'm like, she hadn't named any assistants or any. She has an associate head coach now, but she hadn't had a coaching staff yet. And I'm like, I bet you she's maybe a little too busy to answer random history questions from Matt. Lou, if you listening to this, if you have the time to listen to this while on some recruiting trip or something, and you still you're still willing to answer those random weird questions, please reach out. Let me know if that's still cool. My under the radar storyline. I love a good third goalie story. It's just always been something in my college career. It goes back to Northern Michigan, bringing up a practice goalie and playing him at the Joe against Michigan. And I think it was a third place game of the old CCHA championships and such. Obviously, at UMD, Ben Pat, the Bulldogs have had a couple club goalies they've brought up on those championship teams. The women have a good one this year. Late edition, Anna Bizek. She comes to UMD after playing boys high school hockey at Bayport High School in the Green Bay area, the greater Suamico metro, for those of you familiar with that area. And she grew up in Marquette.
There's the tie. Okay, now I get it.
And there's the Uper tie there as well, right?
I knew there was something.
And she played high school boys hockey in Marquette, kind of like Abby Rock grew up playing boys hockey in the UP as well. Apparently Forrest Carr, the AD, formerly at Northern Michigan, he's the one that family friend or something. He brought up to Mora like, hey, here's someone that's apparently she was done with hockey, going to maybe do some club hockey, and now she's at UMD. Some people around here may recognize the name. She was the state championship goaltender that beat Superior. Sorry to bring that up for all our Superior, Wisconsin
Appreciate it.
Listeners there. So just an intriguing person to come in. She obviously knows with what UMD has that this is not, she may never see the ice in 4 years. Who knows? But I don't know. Just for me, it's kind of curious to see what the Bulldogs have. Probably really raw, but she's interesting. And then of course, Zach Sandy on the men's side. I'm intrigued to see if we see more of him. Again, I got one of my favorite stories from last season was writing about the period he played against St. Thomas, and hearing about the time, all the injuries he went through in that first semester, and the puck that almost killed him, and everything in practice that he took, and just that crazy first semester he had. So I'm curious to see Zach Sandy's evolution as well this year.
I've been doing this for how many years now? 19? A lot of years. I think that's the first time that I've done a postseason post-mortem, whatever, with Scott Sandelin, and he actually made it sound like he regretted not letting the third goaltender out there to play at some point. He made it sound like he wished he had given Zach Sandy a shot there in the second half of the year, and we'll see if that leads to something here in the first half of this year. It wouldn't be the first time they played three goaltenders early in a year. They did it in Hunter Miska's freshman year. They played Miska. Hunter Shepard got to start that year in October, and Nick Deary did as well, and eventually went to Miska to start the NCHC season and never looked back.
Yeah, those starts cost Shepard a possible
red shirt.
5,
yeah, that's gift.
And a COVID year, red shirt and a COVID year. Hunter, we joked about that with Brett Larson at Media Day, and he said, "Man, I'm glad we played Shepard that year." From Matt, not me, on Twitter. When's the men's team ever going to get a third jersey again? Are they going to get a third jersey again? We see the women every year come out with these cool third jerseys. Guys, what would you want to see in a third jersey from the men?
Well, it's worth, I didn't even think about it until you just said it, but Laura Bellamy was the driver of a lot of those third jerseys for the women. So will the women continue that tradition?
Her and Nick Bryant.
Yeah,
and Nick Bryant, yeah.
So I don't know if that will continue on the women's side, because I don't think it was such a passion of Laura and Nick, and then I don't know who's going to take that on for the women. So I'll be curious to see if the women have one this year.
Yeah, that's a good point. I've gone back and forth on this. I feel like unless you have something specific you want to show people, you don't need a third jersey. St. Cloud State did third jerseys that were gray a couple of years ago, and I spent the entire first 2 periods of the Saturday game there trying to figure out who everybody was because you couldn't see the numbers on their arms.
Yeah,
anymore.
I don't like them, but
so I feel like unless you have an alternate logo, which UMD really kind of doesn't, unless you have
Triangle Dog.
No.
I want Triangle Dog to come
would
back so
love
bad.
that.
So bad I want Triangle Dog to come back.
I'll sign that petition.
Of course you will. Anything to turn the knife in my back, that would, yeah. Nice of you guys. Appreciate it. No, unless you have something specific you want to show off. Maybe if you've got a Lift Bridge logo you think is cool, and I don't know that they do for the front of a jersey, but you know what I'm saying. You don't need one. They're nice to have because you can sell them, make some money. But if they're not cool, no one's going to want to buy them. So
how about just the script Bulldogs? I always liked that one.
I still
it's
have
kind of a throwback. Yeah, maybe throw a throwback in there.
I don't mind those. The throwback ideas are generally, they've had some cool jerseys over the years.
You don't need a black jersey. That's cliche now.
Maybe if we're going to bring back Triangle Dog, we can bring back that block M with Duluth in the middle of the M that everybody loves so much.
No, Triangle Dog is not in the same category.
No, it's worse.
No. Not even close.
Block it. Yeah.
No.
That's
I do take it back, though, because the women probably will have one for the 25th anniversary.
That's a good point. Yep.
So that's this year as well, and they probably already have that planned. So I take that back.
They probably have one this year.
Yeah.
Right. All right. We are running out of time. Wyatt can cut this from the podcast, but I'm going to ask it. This was the best submitted question. Dan Jacobson. My apologies. Dan Jacobson. This is a non-hockey related questions, but who will get a win first, the Minnesota Vikings or the Augustana Vikings? And I actually looked this up because I was curious. Augustana plays Wisconsin October 7th and 8th. They're the newest college hockey team this year, Augustana in Sioux Falls. Yes, that Augustana from the NSIC. And then they get Bowling Green on October 14th and 15th. And those that don't know, that's a program in complete chaos right now.
Yeah.
They lost one of their top players to the transfer portal. They got 3 players suspended for hazing, a potential alleged hazing incident. Their head coach has been suspended for alleged hazing. So I think we're looking at Augustana maybe getting a win on the 14th and 15th. The Vikings play the Chargers at home, then at the Panthers, home versus the Chiefs before then. And again, we're recording this. You're going to listen to this after the Vikings against the Chargers. So probably by our luck, the Vikings beat the Chargers.
That's the Something's Got to Give Bowl. Those are 2 teams that made the playoffs last year that both started 0-2, and neither one of them probably thought they were going to.
Yeah, so. I think I'm intrigued by Augustana to see how good they're going to be this year. I think they're going to be in a better position than St. Thomas was, who was kind of forced into D1. Augustana's had a little time to build. So
the Minnesota Vikings will win a game before the Augustana Vikings play a game.
Not by much, though. Because
I didn't say by much.
They're going to lose to L.A. And this is, again, airing after that, so I hope that's correct. Yeah. And then they'll probably beat Carolina. So it'll be Carolina. It'll be like by a week?
Yeah, by a week.
If the season started at the same time, the Augustana Vikings would have won a game first.
I would give all my money in my wallet, which ain't much, but I would give all of it for the Vikings and Chargers to get into a tie. I would pay all the money.
Yeah. Okay. Back to college hockey.
Yeah.
Augustana, by the way, is a trip. Zach, I don't remember if you were there. Bruce, you were in Sioux Falls for that
great.
regional.
Yep.
That's a great regional.
Yep.
As long as it's in the fall. As long as we're going to Sioux Falls in the fall.
I used to have family in Sioux Falls. We've been down there a lot. It's a wonderful town.
Don't send me the Dakotas in the winter.
No.
Early October, let's do a series at Augustana.
Yes. Augustana in October, Arizona State in January.
There we
made
go.
the schedule. Everybody can move on.
All right. Let's do 2 quick hits to close this out here. Well, maybe 3 quick hits. Some alumni questions here. Which former and I want listeners to keep receipts on this, keep score. Let's see who gets this right at the end of the season. Which former Bulldog scores the most points in the NHL in 2023-24? Not goals, points. Bruce, I'll let you have the first pick on this one.
I'm taking Alex Iafallo with the Winnipeg Jets. I don't know if he's ever going to be more than a 40, 45-point guy really in the NHL consistently, but I think that'll be enough, and I do think he'll have a good year there. I like the way that they play. And the way he plays fits that, I think, pretty well. And as long as he gets over not being able to surf on his off days, because I looked it up on Google. I don't think there's a lot of places to surf in Winnipeg. As long as he get over that, I think he'll be fine up there.
Zach, you had to look that up on Google?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
I Googled it, yeah. When I die and they go through my Google searches, they're going to see some really weird stuff.
I'll take a bit of a dark horse and say Scott Prunovich in St. Louis. Torrey Krug is hurt. I think Scotty's going to have some opportunity there, and if he can stay healthy, he's going to get some power play time, and we're talking points here.
Yep.
All he has to do, he's got a lot of good NHL players. If he can set them up like the way he set up some UMD players, those are tap-in goals for those guys. So I'll take Prunovich in St. Louis.
And let's not forget, even when Torrey Krug was healthy, they tried to trade him. It's pretty obvious that they're looking at Scotty Prunovich to play Torrey Krug's role, which means they want Prunovich to run the number one power play and not Torrey Krug. And they didn't want both those guys on the same team because they didn't want Prunovich taking all of Krug's minutes. So it'd be interesting to see if once Krug is healthy, how they distribute minutes and how they handle that, because it is tough having two very similar left shot small defensemen on the same team.
Noah Cates actually had the most points for a Bulldog last year in Philadelphia. Neil Pionk was also up there. And Zach's got me thinking about defensemen here. Yeah. I'm still going to go Noah. I'm going to go Noah Cates because I think he's got, the upside on him. He's got a lot of growth yet. I think he's only going to get better with the Flyers. Yeah. I know that's a tough team right now that's still in rebuilding mode to score points on, but it was almost like a sneaky 38 points he put up with the Flyers last year. So I'll take
Torts loves him.
And he's like, Torts' his favorite player of all time. Apparently what it sounds like. So the only thing Torts wants to see more out of Noah is more points. So I think he's going to get that chance in Philly to do so. Most points by a former Bulldog in the Professional Women's Hockey League in 2023-24. They just held their draft finally in September. They are going to be beginning play tentatively, I guess, sometime in January 2024. Zach, you get the first pick on this one.
This one's hard. I thought the NHL was an easier decision, to be honest, and that one was not easy.
Yeah.
I'll take Elizabeth Jaguar.
That's why I wanted
in New York.
Jiggy.
Yeah. She's so, we only got to see her in Duluth for one season, but she is so talented. I think, there's so many, because it was the first year of the league, there were so many good players available to be drafted. I think she went in the 5th round,
yeah, she did.
Which is crazy to me. Yeah. And I'm not going to call myself an elite evaluator of professional women's hockey talent, but that to me is just a steal for New York. She's probably going to play on a line with Alex Carpenter and Abby Rock, who are great at Wisconsin too. So I'll go with Jiggy.
That was also my choice. I'll go to the defense and say Ashton Dell. I think she's going to get a lot of opportunity in Ottawa. They did take her in the 2nd round for a reason. So, she's going to be running a power play unit, I would think, up there. And they have to think, they think highly of not just her defense, but her offensive ability. Her skating is top notch. She can move the puck. She can shoot the puck. I think Ashton Bell has a big year up there.
I'm going to go Katarina Murzova in Ottawa. I also thought Gabby Hughes was also maybe on my list, especially if someone up there goes, Gabby and Jiggy played pretty well together in college. Maybe they get that duo back together. Gabby could benefit from that. Maybe you get Gabby, Jiggy, and Katka on a line. My God.
Well, Daryl Watts is in Ottawa too.
Daryl Watts is in Ottawa as well. Though Watts hasn't played a lot of games the last couple of years. She's got some. She's gonna have to get her legs back under her. But again, they're not playing that many games this year in the PWHL. From what it sounds like, we don't have schedules or anything like that yet. But I'm gonna go Katka, just a seasoned veteran, pro hockey player. You won't have to see much of an adjustment there. I think she'll step right into this league and do well. All right, that's all the time we have this week on the Bulldog Insider Podcast, which you can find on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe and rate us. For more Bulldogs hockey coverage, visit DuluthNewsTribune.com/Bulldog Insider. Subscribe to gain access to all our coverage all season long. Zach, thanks for, again, coming back for season 6. And can you give us a quick preview of Bulldog hockey on My9 Sports this year.
We were laughing before we started taping. I really could only tell you the first weekend because that's just how life gets in the fall with all the schedules that are happening. But we've got the Long Island opening series for the women Friday and Saturday, and then the U.S. Hockey Hall of Fame game for the men on Michigan against Michigan Tech on Saturday night. So it's a three-fer on opening weekend for us, and it'll be a good year. I hope that at the end of the year we can look back on this episode and Zach can say that he was wrong about a lot of the stuff that he said, but we're looking forward to it.
Zach going third person to close out the podcast here. Bruce.
Well, I only do one game opening weekend. We're doing the Michigan Tech game on KDAL, 610 AM, 103.9 FM, online, KDAL610.com. But we are doing 4 games the following weekend. We're doing the Ohio State women's games against UMD, as well as the Northern Michigan series, October 13th and 14th at Amsoil. So a doubleheader weekend for me, and looking forward to getting started. And got to go put the booth back together because it looks like some things got taken apart when they had ESPN in there for the Women's Frozen Four. So I'll have to fix that here next couple of weeks.
A lot of hockey at Amsoil Arena to start the month of October. Thanks to our sponsor, Essentia Health, for their continued support of the Bulldog Insider Podcast. And thanks to all of you for listening, and especially those of you that first jumped on the bandwagon of this podcast back in season 6, especially those of you from Irma.
We love you, Irma.
Irma put us on the map way back in season 1. Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll catch you next week.